John Reeves. How's it going, everybody? How y'all doing today? Guys, we have an amazing guest on today actually. I know it seems like night. Thank you so much for the host, Boba's baby mama. But yeah, guys, we got a great guest on today. I am very, very, very excited about this one. It is Daryl from Final Fantasy Union, guys. He has interviewed every single person that I have ever enjoyed their content, legitimately. And I honestly could not be more humbled to have him on today. So please, if you guys have questions, post them in the chat. As always, I will try to answer them as we read them. And yeah, let's give it a go. Let's see what happens. Here we go. This is Daryl from Final Fantasy Union. Bum, 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 and make sure you can hear me. How you doing, Daryl?
Hey, greetings. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Doing really good. We got man, there's so much stuff going on in the Final Fantasy Union world right now, and how's it going? You guys
it's going really well, but it's crazy, absolutely crazy how much stuff's happening right now, just for us, but also Final Fantasy in general. Like we're going through a real huge positive period.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be able to say that, because if you go back 5 or 6 years, it was kind of doom and gloom.
It was a dark place we were in, kind of. Yeah.
It was a dark place.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, that's the truth. Like right now they've had the remakes or remasterings. They had Final Fantasy VII Remake, just released First Soldier. There's a new update for 15. There's a ton of Final Fantasy content out right now. So
yeah, it's crazy.
It's nuts, man. Well, speaking of the depth of how much that you guys have to work with right now, the book that you guys the Kickstarter, that is a massive success. I saw that you guys had the Kickstarter on. I did not see until recently how successful that was, dude. So congratulations on that. That's a massive thing. That's awesome. But how did that come about? How did the book start taking shape?
So we had Lauren, who runs Final Fantasy Union with me, who's also my wife. We both love the franchise, and Final Fantasy Union has been around for 13 years now.
Oh, nice.
And we've been doing a podcast together for well over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about Final Fantasy all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's in an official capacity on the shows we do, or whether we're just in the kitchen making dinner and talking about stuff. And we always like to try and discuss interesting angles, unique things we can do. And about sort of 6 years ago, we had this idea of I guess because of how expansive Final Fantasy is, you've got obviously the many games that people know about. You've got all the re-releases, all the different ports that have existed, the expansions.
Yeah.
And we thought it'd be really cool to find a way to try and map it all together. So you could see how all these different things connect. And our original idea was actually, because going back to that period, there was a tendency, and they still kind of do it now, where Square would announce a game and then you wouldn't hear anything about it for ages.
Yes.
We thought it would be fun to take a look at how often does this happen? How quickly do they normally take?
Yeah.
And so I started off looking at a couple of games, gradually built out more and more and more, and then I ended up with 100 or so games in this kind of chart, whatever it was that we came up with.
Yeah.
And we were trying to come up with a way to visualize it, because we thought that would be quite fun, make an infographic or some kind, just to show how this is all panned out. All these games are overlapping. They announced this game here, but then this one came out before that even came out, even though it was announced afterwards.
It's
all
so
this
sporadic.
crazy stuff. Yeah, and we just couldn't figure out how to do it, because the first couple of years of Square Enix's existence were reasonably calm.
Yeah.
But when you got into 2008, 2012, there was stuff happening all over the place. They started releasing tons of mobile games, expansions, re-releasing old games, etc. We just couldn't figure out a way to make it look normal or digestible. So we shelved the project and just focused on other things. We started up the YouTube channel, which has done really well. And I think with the YouTube channel in a good place, we started thinking about maybe like venturing into a book. Like we've done so much content that we felt it would make sense to transition over to that medium.
Mm-hmm.
And after like tons and tons of brainstorming about potential topics we could write about, and having many ideas rejected by numerous video game book publishers, we just kind of settled on this one that just seemed to make the most sense. Just like an encyclopedia of basically a chronological look at Final Fantasy over the years.
Yeah.
But condensing it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're focusing only on original games, their sequels, spin-off games, and remakes. So we're not talking about remasters, enhanced ports, expansions, and all of those crazy things that start to get a bit overwhelming if you think about it.
I mean, like already in the book, you've got 127 games. That is
actually 128 now.
100. Oh yeah, Are you guys covering First Soldier?
That was in the 127. That was going to be the last game, but
nice.
And this kept happening like throughout all the research process. I found another game that I'm going to include as well, so it's at 128 now.
Dang, that is a huge undertaking though, man. And then mapping it all out, like I'd imagine, and I've probably said this more than once on this podcast, but you probably look like Charlie Day on Always Sunny, where he's like in the mailroom. He's like this connected to that.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
That's insane. How did you keep track of all that? I have a
massive spreadsheet basically of every single game, like who the directors were, what like sub franchise they're connected to, when they came out in Japan, North America, and Europe.
Yeah,
like it's what type of game it is, what platforms they came out on. Like it's a bit of a minefield.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I've struggled most with is like the classifications of like not touching any of the ports in this book, because there have been some games that came out in Japan and then they came out in the West, but it wasn't a new game, but it wasn't the same game.
So that, like, what were the differences?
Dissidia Arcade would be a classic example where it was released in Japan, and then they released it as Dissidia NT like 2-3 years later. But it's the same game, but it's not the same game. It's basically an enhanced port. So
that's cool.
I will be the book will include Dissidia Arcade, but it won't include Dissidia NT on that basis.
Yeah, that's awesome though. I think that's like, I mean, still like even just limiting those things out, you still got a ton of content. So it's insane, man. How was it working with a lot of the content creators that you had on the book as well too? Like from Unalesca, Night Sky Prince, you've had, I mean, everybody that is a Final Fantasy creator is mentioned in this book. That's awesome.
Yeah, so one of the main things that I actually wanted to do was so the bulk of the content is written by me. It's kind of historical. It's not opinion based. It's just kind of like, this is what happened. Yeah. And here's why the game exists. And then I wanted a more personal side to it too. So for like key milestone games, there will be various creators, as you mentioned, like Unalesca, Night Sky Prince, Alex McCullough as well. And they're going to be talking about their experiences with the game. Not necessarily like when they first played it or anything, but more from like how it influenced them as people. Because I think that's like something that doesn't normally get spoken about. I think people are quite happy to talk about their favorite game and why they like a game, but you know, with Alex, for example, he like exploded because of the Final Fantasy VII remake. His content on YouTube was going crazy. His Twitter's now massive, and he was getting so much attention from loads of different people because of all his different rearrangements of the 7 remake soundtrack. And so, you know, he was obviously very successful before that, but like his work he did in conjunction or latching onto the 7 remake just propelled him. And so like I really wanted to give these creators that I've known for a long time now the opportunity to just like tell people about that side of things, because I don't think many people appreciate like how things can, or how different games have impacted people. And like and I'm really happy that I've got such a spectrum of people as well. So yeah, I've got Alex McCullough is going to talk about the 7 remake. Unalesca is going to talk about Final Fantasy 6. Night Sky Prince is going to talk about 14. I've got Dan's Geo8, who's like obviously a really famous Let's Player. He's going to be talking about Final Fantasy 10. Mike from Resident Arc is going to be talking about Final Fantasy 8. It's just got loads and loads of different people talking about how these games influence them and kind of influence their creative journey, I guess is the best way of putting it. I'm sure you've had a game as well. Like there's probably a game that like really spurred you on in a way that another game just didn't.
Yeah, 100%. I tell people this all the time. Like my room is covered in musical stuff. I'm like a very big musician. I love playing music. I don't know that I'd be a big musician, but like the music in Final Fantasy VII is really what I contribute all this to. Like the music, like the Jenova sound, like her, that just beautiful style. And I mean, that's a lot of where I draw influence from. But that and the story of 7, obviously, too. But I mean, it is insane to think of how much the Final Fantasy franchise has influenced so many creators. I personally know, like, I've seen since, like, Blitz, for instance, his YouTube channel, whenever I first met him, was, like, barely doing a whole lot of content, but he dropped one thing that was, like, a build or something like that for Final Fantasy VII, and just his whole career took off. Like, he quit his job. He's, like, a full-time content creator. It's, like, it's so cool to see how much this franchise has like influenced people, but also changed people's lives in like a successful way. It's not just the success of the games themselves. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah, no, I think it's quite magical, really, that video game has got to that point. Like I remember, and you probably had those conversations as well with like your parents and people of that generation, where they're like, you know, all you do is play games. How are you gonna make a career out of that? Like you're just wasting your life away.
Yeah.
And like now, like, you know, especially with the way that we create our content, you know, a lot of the stuff that I've learned over the years has like helped me craft things in a way that is kind of unique to me. And like I think everyone else is in a similar position where they can leverage their experiences and they're able to now do things more in line with actually what they want, as opposed to being forced to use those skills in areas where they just weren't interested.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I mean, I honestly see that a lot happening. And we just talked to Ashna Christ, and she was telling us about like NFTs and how that's kind of doing the same thing. It's like changing almost the way that the workflow and careers are happening now as well too. But yeah, if you would have told me back whenever I was like 13 years old playing like Final Fantasy X Blitzball all freaking summer long, that like I could be competitively playing this game or something and making a living doing it, I'd be like, what? My mind would just be blown. But yeah,
it's crazy. And like, you know, we even have it now because we've got two girls and there's so many parents now who are like, they're quite critical of things like Fortnite, and it's like, you know, it's a legitimate career now, being like a Fortnite, Dota 2 professional. They can make as much as a professional sports player in the traditional sense. And like, all these parents are quite happy to kind of push their kids to play like American football or soccer, as it would be for you guys, because they think there's so much potential for them. But like, and they would kind of snub their nose at a video game, esport, because they don't understand it. But it's like, you know, they have, I mean, like, I think League of Legends and Dota 2 have huge audiences when they stream their events. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of people watching the grand finals, and they're absolutely insane in terms of scale. And I think that's the thing that's so amazing about video games now, that there are so many opportunities. I think when people really traditionally think about the careers, you're thinking like, oh, I've got to become a programmer, or you know, even now it's like a spanner to being like an artist, QA person, or a musician. But you know, if you're thinking about like, you know, so many opportunities for journalists, like voice actors, like content creators like ourselves, streamers, like there's so many different avenues now where if you've got some kind of imagination or something you want to put out there, the opportunities are readily available.
Yeah. And I really think that like more of it would be like, you know, like you were saying, whenever parents really push them into like American football or something like that, or like baseball, and they're really just get them hyper focused and obsessed with it. If they put those same things into things that they're passionate about, like for instance, playing Fortnite or like Minecraft, I think it's called like Red Block Building or something like that. I can't remember. Red Rock, I think it's the name of it. But I saw a listing for a job that was like $300,000 a year for like teaching Red Rock on Minecraft. And my daughter is amazing with that. And I was like, we got to get you in there, okay? You're like, I'm going to make you a resume or something. But no, like, it's just crazy to think that now I've got 2 daughters as well. And like, video games could be an actual real, like, a real day job for them, you know?
I mean, I've even seen stuff where now they're like hiring people to be like Animal Crossing island renovators. And they're like, $50-$60 an hour to come in and spruce up my island. Like, it's crazy, like the types of career. I mean, that's an evolution of back in the olden days when you'd be like, can you do the Chocobo race in Final Fantasy X for me, please? Just I'll give you my memory card, pay you $5.
I need a couple of golden chocobos, make it happen. Yeah, for real, man. My gosh. Well, so how did your story with Final Fantasy get started? Like, what was your first, I guess, experience with it, and how did it grow from that into Final Fantasy Union as it is now?
How did I get from there to here?
Yeah.
My first experience is very unorthodox. I know everyone has a very unorthodox story. My one is like I was a really big PC gamer when I was sort of like 10, 11, 12, and I'd like never heard of an RPG, never touched the thing. Like I was like all about like Command and Conquer, first person shooters, like sports games, like very action based games. And my neighbor, his sister was a flight attendant, and she used to go to Asia every now and again. And she went to Malaysia, and I mean there's a lot of bootlegged products that exist in that realm of the world. And she came back with a bootlegged copy of Final Fantasy VII on the PC.
Oh my God, yes, nice.
And so like, yeah, we'd like never heard of this thing before, despite all the huge marketing campaigns. I didn't have a PlayStation, so I was completely oblivious to this game even existing. And so we booted it up, and I was like, this seems interesting. It's a bit more slow paced than I would be typical like used to, but I liked the fact that you could like build these characters up, you could change their equipment, and that you could see it influencing how they performed in battle. And so I would, be going around my next door neighbor's house when I could to see how he's getting on with the game. And then eventually he let me borrow it, but I could only borrow one disc at a time.
Oh,
so
gosh.
I borrowed the first disc, took it home, and at the time I was like meddling with upgrading my hardware in my computer. I just bought a new processor, put that in, played Final Fantasy VII, and it was working really well. And then it would just crash.
Oh no!
Every now and again.
Yeah.
Like I must have played the opening bombing mission like 20 or 30 times.
Yeah.
Just seeing if I could get past that bit. And it just kept crashing. And I figured out it's the processor. I had to put the bad processor back in just so I could try and get through that section.
Yeah.
But I think like it was a testament to how much I enjoyed the game that I was willing to just plow through that, have the patience to be like, no, it's gonna work this time. It's gonna work. And then I managed to get all the way through. Managed to align the disc swaps as well, because he would never let me have the next disc until I actually needed it.
Oh, that's cool.
So I didn't know when the disc change was coming up.
Yeah.
So I'd like get to the end of disc 1, and I'd have to hope that he was in.
Yeah.
Go round, ask if I can get the next disc. I got to the end of disc 2, beat Hojo. He wasn't in.
Oh no.
And so I was like, oh, all right. I've got I was conscious about power saving, so I turned the monitor off and just kind of left it on the disc shape, the save
that's old
or
school.
disc swap screen.
Nicely done.
And then while I was waiting, my dad thought the computer was off, so turned it on. And turned it off.
No.
No. And then
what have you done, Father?
When I got the disc back, it took me ages to beat Hojo again.
Yeah.
And when I finally did, the game started crashing again. So I couldn't get past the high wind cutscene before the disc change. Oh man, like it was such a trek. By the time I finished 7 though, like Final Fantasy 8 was almost out.
Oh my gosh. Nice.
And I finished 7, and it was great. I'm going to talk about a bit of video we're doing at the moment. One of the things that's always interesting about the PC version is that the soundtrack was different.
Oh, weird.
And so like basically depending on the sound card you had, the sounds would all be completely different. So and like One Winged Angel is like a legendary piece of music that everyone loves, and the choir is a huge part of that. When I played the game, there was no choir. There's no singing.
What?
Nothing.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like in school talking to people about One Winged Angel. They were saying how amazing it was, and the choir and all the stuff. And I was like, "What are you talking about? There's no choir."
There is no choir. Yeah.
And this is like there was no reference because you couldn't just download an MP3 or listen to a stream.
For real.
So we had this huge back and forth arguments about how this sounded.
People have
no
clue, man.
Yeah, when Final Fantasy VIII came out, like I didn't even know it was coming out. My friend just came around and he was just like, "It's out, like this game's out." So I just like hightailed it on a bike straight down to the store, picked it up, and like even though I loved 7, 8 was the game that like I really, because it was the first one I owned.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved
the story's epic in that one as well.
I mean, like the characters are all around the same age as me. I think a lot of people, kind of my generation, especially when we did our School Origins video, so many people saying that they relate to school because they were a teenager at the time, and you know they felt a lot of pressure and they didn't really want to interact with people, and I think it was really really good in that regard. And like that game, I did everything in that game. It's the only Final Fantasy game, ironically, where I've like done all the stuff, like I did the poo poo quest, beat a mega weapon, like got every ultimate weapon.
Nice.
I've done that in none of the other games. I cannot be bothered.
Nice.
But there was just something about 8 that just really stuck with me. And like you said about the music in 7, that was 8 for me. I love the music in 7, but there was just something about the music in 8, especially the landing.
Dude, yes.
I remember just because I like taught myself how to play the keyboard, and I had my own keyboard, but I'd never really taken it too seriously. And I remember the landing, it just flicked a switch, or something, and I just stood the characters on the beach, let the music loop around, and I just sat there. I must have sat there for like 3 or 4 hours listening to that music on loop, just figuring out each of the notes, the chord sequences, and so I taught myself how to play the landing, and then I went into school, played it during one of my lessons, and the teacher was so blown away because like before that point I couldn't even do like two-handed playing at all or anything, and they were like, "Where the hell did this come from?"
Video
then took a music qualification.
Oh my god!
Because I just got so infused. I performed like Final Fantasy pieces for my GCSEs over here, so I guess that would be like whatever you do over there when you're like 15, 16. I did we did a small rendition, so I had me on a grand piano, there's like a violin, a flutist of Melodies of Life.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then I started like getting into composition, so I started composing for games randomly.
That's awesome.
And I joined a Final Fantasy forum to get feedback on my music, and ended up loving just talking to other people about Final Fantasy, because I didn't really know anyone around here that played the games. And from there I just made a load of friends. I went to university with one of the people I met on the forum.
That's awesome.
Which is really weird because this is like 15 years ago when the internet was not the same as it is now.
MSN, you had like Yahoo back in the day.
And just grew from there really. I spent a lot of time on Final Fantasy communities, and then when I finished my degree, which was in computer science, I wanted to teach myself a programming language. Started building sites in PHP, and I started building Final Fantasy sites because it's what I knew. And Final Fantasy Union was one of those websites. So it all just kind of spawned from there, really. And that's a really, really long, lengthy story about how I am where I am today. Is because my neighbor brought back an illegal copy of Final Fantasy VII from Malaysia.
It's awesome though, man. Well, was the idea of Final Fantasy Union, is that like what it is now? Was that the original concept that you had when you created the site?
Kind of. I mean, like, so there was a precursor website called Square Union, and I wanted that to be like an information resource. So we had like a bestiary for Final Fantasy 12, which was like sortable, so you could see which enemies had the most health, which had the least health or whatever. And just like just kind of like what Wiki is now, but more interactive. And we started like getting traffic coming into the website. We started doing news, like trying, like we had like a massive effort to try and do news. Based on how well the website started doing, I started learning about digital marketing, and then that's what I ended up doing as my career.
Nice.
Based on that. So like I had my Final Fantasy websites on my CV or my resume applying for these jobs, and I managed to land a job at some like massive agency in London. Because they were impressed at my initiative.
That's awesome.
And I'd like going to work in the morning. I'd like to be scouring Japanese news websites to see if there was anything cool happening, posting up stories during my lunch break, like writing stuff on the train. So yeah, like, kind of, but not really. But like because of how well the website was doing, we actually got reached out to by Square.
Oh dang.
Which was like absolutely insane. I must have been like 22, 23. Like things aren't the way they are now. Like there was no such thing as an influencer back then. So like to get a communication from Square in an official capacity was just like I didn't think it was real.
Yeah, that's honestly, like God reaching out to you, pretty much. Like, hello.
It was crazy, and so yeah, they asked me if I wanted to come along to a press event for The Last Remnant.
Oh, nice.
And I would have had the chance to interview the director, who was Takai, who was now the director of 16, obviously. But I couldn't go. Like, how bad is that?
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't get the time off work because it was too short notice. So I was like, thanks for the invitation, Square. I can't go. Please don't blacklist me or something. This is really embarrassing.
Yeah.
But no, I set up Final Fantasy Union shortly after to be like narrow focus on Final Fantasy. And then they reached out again to for the opportunity to speak about Dissidia. So the first Dissidia that was coming out, I got to interview the director of that. And I remember going there, and I was like, it was me, like, this running this Final Fantasy fan site, and I was writing editorial pieces at the time. We're also very critical of the company, and I was like, "Is this okay? Do you mind me like slagging the company off and coming to an event like this? This is, you know." And they were like, "Yeah, sure, just do what you need to. Someone needs to be honest about what's going on." And I remember, just going into interview, and like I had to share the interview with someone from like a serious publication, and they were like, their interview questions were like really, really like generic. So they'd be like, "Okay, so can you tell me what type of game Dissidia is? Like, can you explain to our readers why they might be interested in playing this game?" And I'm being in there like, what characters are you going to do in there? What special abilities are there going to be? Like, I was asking them all about like their piracy concerns, like what are they going to do about sequels, the DLC plans. I was like super hardcore, and they were just like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
That's pretty awesome though. And I think that probably like that's maybe one reason that you connected a lot better with him, because like you're not just, you're an actual fan, you know?
Yeah, and we tried to be as diligent as possible with our research. I mean, I remember when we went to E3 the first time, and we saw Front Mission Evolved, which was not the best of games. I think we can agree. I think it's got a Metacritic of like 4 or 5 or something. And the person hosting the session was Shinji Hashimoto, who I think he's just retired. Obviously, like, you know, huge figure at Square, vice president of Square Enix, essentially, the Final Fantasy brand manager. So for us, it was huge, like being this guy. And you know, we it was like a press room of like 10 people, and you know, we asked like proper questions and stuff. And he actually came up to us afterwards and said thank you.
Oh, that's so cool,
we
man.
actually showed an interest, and we were professional about it. And you know, it meant a lot that we could go in and we could have conversations with these guys. And we weren't asking just like generic questions about stuff. And I love the reactions as well. Like,
Yeah.
I got to interview Yoshi P a couple of years ago, and I was meant to be asking him about, I think it was Shadowbringers, and I just pulled a question out of left field. I was like, I know that Final Fantasy 11 is in your business division. What's going on with the mobile game? And they all all the Japanese people in the room just kind of looked at each other.
I bet that was
like how does he know this? Like, why is he asking us about Final Fantasy 11 mobile? What's going on?
What is this? Oh my god, that would like, I don't know. I bet I would have been freaked out and a little like, I don't even know. What did they end up doing? Did they answer the question?
Yeah. He was just like, thanks for your interest in the mobile game. We have not provided an update for many years, but I can provide you with a small update now if you'd like.
Nice. God, man.
Then they ended up canceling the game.
Oh,
you know,
story of my life. Man, that is awesome though, and it's insane that you've been able to interview like so many amazing people. I think I said this before we started the podcast, but like, dude, you have interviewed everybody, and it's awesome.
The only person I think we haven't interviewed is Nomura.
Do you think I mean, obviously, you'd have to get a translator, right, for that, or
yeah.
And then I don't know. Have you ever reached out to him?
I think based on who we are now, I think the opportunities will be very limited. When we interviewed a lot of the creators in the past, it was because we had like a wider publication that we were working with called Gaming Union, which we'd set up. And so we used that to get a lot of the opportunities because we had a decent reach. Yeah. And so that was how we got to interview Kitase multiple times, like Toriyama, so awesome, Uematsu, and people like that. But we don't have the same pull anymore. So I would love to interview Nomura. We actually, our kind of sister website, Kingdom Hearts Union, they actually got to interview Nomura a couple of years ago in the build up to Kingdom Hearts 3. Yeah. But yeah, Lauren and I have never had that chance, unfortunately. We've interviewed a load of other people though, and it's so fun to talk to them about different things. Yeah. Because we can ask them very specific questions. I feel as though like they get those questions a lot from the Japanese publications. But not so much from the Western ones. Yeah,
we're a little bit more like tiptoe kind of, or like, I don't know. But yeah, I agree, man. I don't know. Do you see like, are y'all going to be bringing back doing more interviews? I know like on your YouTube channel, like whenever y'all started out, that's almost essentially all that your YouTube channel was at first, was just interviewing like voice actors and stuff like that. Is that something eventually y'all going to work back into doing?
I think it's something that we would like to do. I think the main challenge for us is the logistics behind it. I think, especially since we've had the kids, we have very like tight windows for when we can record, and I think a lot of the voice actors, especially, are based in LA. Yeah, which is not the nicest of time zones for us because they're 8 hours behind. It's so rough. We have to be very careful about when we could record, and like the last big ones we did, which I think is the ones you're referring to, was we actually partnered with Square Enix to interview most of the cast of Type Zero, which was also completely amazing, insane. But like from a logistics perspective, it was an absolute nightmare. So like Lauren and I went up. We would have to go out to the Square Enix office in London to record the podcasts. And because we all wanted to do it in the same location as the Square Enix team that we were doing it with. And I think we would generally start the recordings around 10 p.m. and sometimes we wouldn't finish until 3 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. Then we'd have to try and get home. Oh my God. From London at so like 2-3 o'clock in the morning and like pass out. Jeez. Yeah, and like we were both still working at the time, so we'd have to try and do it on weekends and then try and recover for like Monday morning. Yeah. And like I remember the first interview we were doing, I feel as though it was with Rem, Peyton McCormick. We got it all set up, and Square Enix had these like crazy security policies, and the person at Square Enix that we were working with hadn't informed their IT that we were going to be working at this time on the weekend, so we didn't have any internet access. Oh. So we had to do 3 interviews on their 4G connection, which worked
Yeah.
pretty well.
That's
But it
awesome,
was
though.
like this
Yeah.
huge panic of like, what are we gonna do? How is this gonna work? Oh, this is crazy. It was a ride, and like because we had so many interviews to do,
Mhm.
we would try and do 3 a night, but Type Zero has like 13
3 a
or 12 or
night?
13
Jeez,
characters, and
man.
then like you have all of the other characters as well.
Yeah.
Because we did like some of the kind of secondary characters too.
Mhm.
And it ended up just being this huge ordeal. I think it ended up lasting about 3 months to get all of the interviews done.
Dang.
And I think the last 1 or 2 we just did them remotely. We didn't worry so much about the production value, and we just gotta get
Gotta
these last
grind
ones
these
out.
Yeah.
Grind these out.
Yeah. We got Blitz said, I remember Final Fantasy Union character origin stories. Those were a huge staple for me with YouTube and something I always watched often. Now I'm thankful to be alongside them with the content creating for the community, but in a different way. So,
oh, thanks so much, Blitz.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, man, you guys definitely set the stage for a lot of the Final Fantasy content creators out there. And I think that's like huge, man. I didn't realize how much you guys actually have influenced a lot of the content creators that I now am watching, and like it's awesome.
It's a weird position to be in, honestly. Like I don't know how to feel about it. Like because there are people that's
Mhm.
like Blitz is saying now that like we I know Ryan as well talks about how we inspired him, and
Yeah.
it's weird to be seen as an inspirational figure. Like I mean, I know that we have like over 200,000 subscribers, which is just still mad. But I feel as though, I mean, I even like some of our Origins videos have got over 1 million views now, which is just also mental. But I think because they're kind of just numbers,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to comprehend that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't. When you like think about it logically, that okay, so we've just put a video up about Final Fantasy 9, and actually to your earlier point about creators being inspired, that's an amazing project. Talk about the Memoria project, which is a ton of different professionals in the industry, including Dan Eder, who are making a Final Fantasy 9 remake behind the scenes, and it's been viewed by like 70,000 people in a day or something.
Yeah.
And it's like you think, yeah, that's as many people that live in my town.
It's a really well done video though, man. I mean, seriously, and like you said, I mean, what y'all put it up just 3 or 4 days ago now? It's not even a week, but yeah, whenever I saw the numbers, I was like, my God, that's awesome though.
It's so hard to comprehend, and it's like you never really know. Like with the book, for example, we had no idea if anyone was going to support it or get behind it. I think, we were preparing for the absolute worst, that, we were not going to hit the funding goal. But there was also like a small part of me that was thinking, but it could go crazy.
Yeah.
But it probably won't. But it could, but it probably won't.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Well, first, really quick, Blitz said, ask Daryl if he plans on doing a character origins for Final Fantasy 14.
Ooh.
Dun, dun,
now
dun.
we have a strict policy here with the Origins videos, that we only do Origins videos for characters whose story arcs are complete.
Oh, there you go. Well, yeah. So that's a really good answer. There you go, Blitz. That's a good answer.
It's why we didn't do Noctis and Arden for a very long time, because they kept producing more 15 content, and it was like we had so many requests to do Origins for Noctis and Arden, and it would be like, but we don't know when this. I don't want to do an updated Origins video down the line when we find out more. I'd rather just wait until I can make a whole story.
He's saying that it will be complete after Endwalker, but is that confirmed? Do we know Endwalker is done? Do we know that for sure?
It's the end of this chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that means.
But man, so going back to like just your outlook on how, like, even when the Kickstarter, you were like, I don't really know that it's going to be that successful. I have a theory, okay? I think it's because you're a father of 2 young girls, because it's the same with me. Like anything I do, they humble you, like you're like their dad, and like it's just so like it's hard to get out of that perspective, even though you are doing something like amazing with your life. You've got these 2 little girls, and you're like, oh, that's dad, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's how it is. I just
Lauren, because she's done some like she does obviously works with me on Final Fantasy Union as well, and she's got her own platform called She Plays Games, where it's a podcast where it's about shining a light on women in the games industry.
That's awesome.
And she did a campaign last year that got 1 million impressions on Twitter, which is
nice. That's insane.
Crazy.
And 1 million people, man.
Yeah, like, and every now and again, I think what we do, we kind of just it's normal for us, if that makes sense. And like, every now and again, Lauren's just like, we actually did a lot of really cool things this year.
Yeah.
But we're super critical about it. Like if we do a video that's like is underperforming, I'll be like, oh. And if you get like 2 or 3 that haven't done too well, then it's like it kind of undermines everything you feel like you're doing, and then you got to get the next one back to try and kind of get that good feel back again. And
yeah. Man.
It's I think because of where we are, like it's kind of and there's also like people that are doing way better than us as well. Like, I look at some of the Zelda creators like Zeltic.
Oh my
he's
gosh, yeah.
Absolutely huge. I think he's got like 600,000 subscribers now, and his videos get like 3-4 times the views that we do. And then like, so it kind of always puts things into perspective. And I always find it weird that Final Fantasy isn't bigger than it is actually. Like,
I know, yeah.
Because you think it would be, like, it's sold so many copies and there's so much hype around the games, but I guess Breath of the Wild sold like 25 million or something crazy.
So like in comparison, my God, yeah, that's crazy.
There's no Final Fantasy game that's done that well.
Well, it's probably because, like, I mean, all right, look, I love Zelda, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, so please no death threats, Zelda fans. But like, Zelda's a little bit more to consume, or a little bit easier to consume, I think. And Final Fantasy VII's like it's not, well, like, you had to read a lot in Final Fantasy, like the earlier ones, there was it was a novel, whereas Zelda's more like a really interesting read, but it's not as in-depth, and there's some really in-depth stuff with Final Fantasy. Like,
I think that's why people like the Origins videos as well, because like it's a whole look at the story, but from a character's perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes them interesting. It's where we try and use kind of like our experiences as parents, as people that have been around the block a little bit, to talk about character emotions, how they might be feeling in that moment. And I think that's one of the great things about the older games as well. And it was something that Najima spoke about with Remake, and how one of the difficulties they had was that, when you're playing Final Fantasy VII originally, you have no idea how they're speaking.
Yeah.
So like, I could read one of the scenes in a completely different way than how you could interpret that scene. And like, that was one of the beauties of those games, and especially like re-looking at the stories, because you get to pull all these different things together. And I think a lot of people would view the stories from A to B, like, here's the start, here's the end.
Yeah.
And when we were putting together the Origins videos, like, I would start that way, but then I'd look at things that happen later on and be like, so like that would influence like what they were thinking here, and that changes how I might view this event and what happened.
Yeah.
And I especially remember, like, with the Kefka Origins video, like, constantly going back and revising things. Yuna was an amazing one as well, because maybe also because I'm a father of 2 girls. Like, Yuna and Tidus get a really bad rap a lot of the time, and like, they are 2 of my favorite characters. I think they're 2 of the most developed characters we've ever had in the franchise. And like, Yuna gets so much criticism for being so weak and timid and passive from a physical perspective, but like from a mental perspective, she's probably one of the strongest characters we've ever had. Like, she's such like desire and drive. And like, we really want to, I like to use these videos to like surface these things, really highlight different moments throughout the story where these character traits really come to the fore, and just basically like ram it into people's heads. Like, this is a good thing. Like, Tidus is like, his sacrifice at the end of the game is, it should mean so much more than a terrible laughing scene. Like, and like, he is a bit annoying, but wouldn't you be annoying if you were like 16 years old and you got taken from being like this massive celebrity into being a no-name person in this world where everyone treats you like an idiot? Like,
yeah,
it would be quite frustrating.
yeah. You definitely. And honestly, whenever I played it, whenever I was younger, I'd never put myself in that like full picture way of thinking, you know. And I think that's awesome that you guys go back and do that origin style and like really deep dive into those characters and the emotions in it. I think that's awesome. And like that actually answers one of our fan questions that we've got, but it was what's your personal favorite main character? Would you say that that they would be yours, Final Fantasy X's?
Yeah, I think I would definitely go for Titus and Yuna as probably be my favorite main characters. Yeah, I've grown to appreciate Titus a lot as I've grown older.
Mm-hmm.
I it was the first game that made me like quite emotional because of what was happening. I cried during the Ragnarok scene in Final Fantasy VIII. Like I was a sucker for the eyes on me.
So good.
I don't know what happened. It just kind of like I was just sitting there and yeah, it just kind of got me. But like I think that was a combination of like just that moment, what the the struggles that school have been through. But Final Fantasy X, the ending of that sequence when Titus fades away, that was just a kind of like that was a kick it like huge. Like I wasn't prepared for that to happen. Like, and I don't think I could really comprehend. Like, you know, in a lot of entertainment, it wasn't a happy ending. It was a happy ending, but it wasn't a happy ending.
Yeah.
And like, it just, I was not like based on. I think they talked about it in 7 as well. Like with Aerith's sacrifice, they wanted to try and move away from these like stereotypical Hollywood endings where everything's good in the end and blah blah blah. And it's like no, because everything isn't always good in the end in reality, and it's okay to have a sad ending. Like it doesn't have to be all swings and rainbows and whatever. And like it's why 10-2 is I enjoy 10-2, but it's also a bit of the fact they brought Titus back at the end was a sour note for me. But I also understand why a lot of people wanted him to come back and why it makes people happy, obviously.
Yeah. Do you feel like them bringing him back is almost like, in a sense, a little bit of what's going on with Zack in Final Fantasy VII Part 2?
Yeah, it's kind of what happened with Noctis as well.
Yeah.
And like they
gotta let our people just like
they want to try and make something that appeals to everyone.
Yeah.
And I can understand that, but it is a bit of a shame. I mean, Zack was always going to be in 7 Remake just because he's one of the most popular characters in Japan. Like, and they would be silly not to leverage that for marketing purposes. And I'm not saying that's why they've done it.
Yeah.
But it would make sense that they would try and find a way to increase his inclusion in the game.
Yeah. But like you were saying, I mean, like for me, I guess, like whenever in the ending of 10 was pretty rough because you had an entire game to get attached to this character, and really hope for that happy ending. But like for me, the first experience that I had like that was with Eris whenever Sephiroth just comes out of the freaking skies, and like the entire game you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna get together. Pow. So it's like that was like probably my first heartache as a kid. I was like, oh my god. And
I think Aerith is definitely one of those ones where it hit you or it didn't. Like I didn't use Aerith at all in my party.
I didn't either.
And so like when she went, I was just like, eh.
He's gonna get with Chief anyways.
No biggie. Like it wasn't really, like I think I found her kind of annoying in that regard because he wasn't interested, but she was trying to force the issue a little bit. But then I think the same thing happened with Squall and Rinoa, and I was okay with that. I don't know. Maybe I was a little bit older. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, honestly,
I think if Rinoa had gone, that would have no.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there would have been riots. But yeah, do you have is there a certain storyline? I guess you said like 8 was kind of one that really stood out for you, but like going back and like knowing what you've done with all the origins and stuff, is there a storyline that really resonates with you more than the rest?
I'd have to say 10 as well.
Oh, 10 on that one too.
Yeah,
Nice.
I wouldn't have said before the YouTube channel, and like Lauren and I have discussed this quite a lot actually. Before the YouTube channel and doing the Origins videos, I probably wouldn't have said 10.
Yeah.
But there is just something like really special about that story. and going back, looking at the origins every single time, like I feel it's the game that's most replayable as well. Like, and every single time we play that game again, we spot something else weird in the story, or like a new way of looking at things, or there'll be like the way someone says something, and we'll be like, oh, so that's why that's like there. That story has so much more depth than any of the other games. Like from my perspective now, at least, I think Final Fantasy VIII is a really good story, but it also has its holes, and it's also very very Squall centric. I think that's also something that I noticed as well. Trying to do the origins videos for 8 was actually quite complicated, because you think like Squall has so much involvement in that game.
Yeah, he really does.
But then you think about a character like Irvine. Like, what does he really do? Like, you know, the same for like Quistis and Selphie, like Zell. Like, they're all like,
they're interesting.
What do they really do?
Yeah.
Like, if you focus on like their actual involvement on things, like they have little bits here and there and stuff, but like it's quite small. Yeah. And like 7 was the same as well. Like, looking back at it's a very like good ensemble story. If you start diving into the individual characters, like there's always a point in the game where they basically just don't exist anymore. Like they have, like Red 13 has this moment in Cosmo Canyon, and then he's not really in the rest of the game. Like, he doesn't really make a contribution anymore. Have little bits here and there. Even like Lightning was the same as well. Like, doing Lightning's origins was quite strange, because like after a point in the game, she kind of takes a bit of a back seat, and like, you know, she's not really the leader. She might have an opinion on but she's not like saying, okay, we're gonna go and do this, or she doesn't necessarily have an opinion or a conflict as such. It's just like something else is happening and she's there. And that was one of the things with the origins videos. We didn't want it to be like just a straight like 101 retelling of the story. Like, they went there, they did this, they fought this boss, they looked at that person in a funny way. Like, they actually had to do something meaningful from a character progression perspective.
So I guess what I'm hearing here is that you don't think that there will be like a Hope origins? Like, you don't think Final Fantasy 13 Hope? Or is there already a video of that? Hopefully there's not.
There is not a Hope.
Okay, good. I don't know, man.
I mean, Hope would be all right, because he actually had a bit of a role in the second one, and I feel as though he's got a lot of. I mean, I was always very critical of Hope in the olden days. Because like 13 as well had this weird thing where like halfway through the story, the characters would have like a complete character's like personality switch. So like Hope goes from this person who is hell bent on getting revenge on Snow, because he feels as though Snow is responsible for his mum's death, even though he completely isn't. And no one actually has the balls to say to this kid, actually, no, Snow was trying to save your mom. She chose to end her own life.
Probably because she had to hang out with you, Hope.
But then he goes to this like completely like, actually, no, Snow, you're a cool guy. I want to be your best friend. Like, and it's just like that. Like, there's no like harboring resentment or anything. It's just like, oh, we're okay now. And we're never going to talk about that again.
We did a stream, like a whole playthrough of 13, and like the entire time people would just come in and just like, Hope is probably, I think at least in the Final Fantasy franchise, one of the most hated characters. I don't know why, but in my experience, I've just had so many people talk trash about him.
And Snow as well, right? They hate how positive Snow is.
People have been asking Blitz to play Final Fantasy 13 for the first time, dodged it in high school. I mean, I honestly, what is your opinion on 13? How it holds up just as a story in itself and a game in the franchise?
I was in a weird position. So I reviewed 13 as a games journalist, and like I had. It was a wonderful experience, but also a horrible experience. So I got the game 4 or 5 days before launch.
Oh, nice!
Which, as a huge, massive, like, getting to play a game before launch is crazy. But it was quite difficult for me, because I was used to playing Final Fantasy games in a standard way. Like Persona games, fine. That you have to use status effects, you have to care about weaknesses and all these things, and buffs and debuffs. But in a normal Final Fantasy game, like when do you ever really need to use like protect and shell
Yeah.
and like worrying about status effects? Like you never do. Like you just hit the thing, they die, fine.
Yeah.
And like I was going through 13, and like no guide, nothing, like just completely blind. Bartandalus was a pain in the ass. I kept dying to Doom because I couldn't kill him fast enough. And I was just getting so frustrated because I had to complete the game in 3 days.
Ah, that's rough. No help at all either. Like no guide, no nothing.
Help.
Jeez.
And like at the time, Lauren, she was still living in the US as well. So I was trying to talk to her on like Skype while playing this game, getting very frustrated about the fact I couldn't beat this guy. And I ended up like, I found a Japanese guide where they were like, you got to use a saboteur and a synergist, and I was like, why would I use them?
Yeah,
like I was okay with like the Ravager, Commander, Sentinel, and Medic, fine, pretty traditional classes. But the synergist and the saboteur, like, why would I use them? And then I switched over, and it was like, all right, boom, beat the guy
like
in like 2 seconds.
Almost. Yeah,
I was like, oh, well, that made things a lot easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I managed to like beat the game in 3 days. But in like, I think it took me 44 hours in 3 days.
Rough.
I was, and then I had to write the review as well.
Oh my god.
But I gave the game, at the time I gave it a 9, which was pretty high praise. There were a lot of journalists who were very critical about 13. And I felt as though that a lot of the criticism was unjust at the time. There was stuff around like, oh, there's no towns, it's not very Final Fantasy, all this stuff. And it's just like, you know, if like, this is going to sound odd, I feel as though, but one of the main things about Final Fantasy is that they're always trying to push boundaries and they're trying to be innovative, and like there are elements that pull through, and there's consistencies that exist. And I felt as though Final Fantasy 13 had a lot of those consistencies. Like the battle system is a clear evolution of 10.2, which is a clear evolution of 10 and the ATB system combined. Like they had all of the different magic traits. There was a skill tree system that was not too dissimilar to the Sphere Grid. Like I really enjoyed the fact that they had made the combat like still kind of turn-based, but a lot more action-based, and like you actually had to think about things. Like I felt as though there was plenty of Final Fantasy stuff in there. Like, yeah, sure, the story was not delivered in the best way. I did not think the soundtrack was as good as an Uematsu style soundtrack. Still very good though. And the presentation was good, but probably not as great as it could have been in some regards. But for people marking the game down because it didn't have towns, like stuff, it felt really like kind of disingenuous in a way. Like they didn't really understand, to me, what a Final Fantasy game was or what the ethos was. And I felt as though in a weird way I had to kind of make a stand.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want the developers to feel like they had made the wrong choices,
like it was a complete failure type thing.
Yeah, like you know, you shouldn't be taking risks. You should go back to just release, because that was one of the reasons I've never really been a huge fan of Zelda and like Pokemon games, because they basically just released the same game every single time.
Yeah.
And I liked Final Fantasy because it was different. Like you got different cast of characters, different story, different soundtrack, different world, different gameplay mechanics. Like everything is different, but there's still some common threads. And I really hope that with 13 that they would not be demoralized or demotivated to continue pushing in new ways.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was, it's not my favorite game in the franchise by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a bad game.
Yeah.
And like, based on where we were at that time, there hadn't been a good JRPG released.
Yeah.
For ages anyway. Like there were very, very few.
Yeah.
So it was easily one of the best. Like, I mean, Final Fantasy 10 came out in like 2001, and Final Fantasy 13 came out in 2010.
Jeez.
Like, and between those two games, there weren't really many other. Because like Final Fantasy 12 was okay. I wasn't a huge fan of that one.
Yeah.
I preferred 13 to 12. But yeah, I thought 13 was decent. I just was a bit upset about what happened afterwards, because I think that having that commonality is fine, but where they went, they just kind of went all over the place in terms of like there's no consistency now whatsoever. Like there's I mean, like in the past there would be different threads that held together. Like they had the ATB system which was being evolved. You had different magic systems that were being evolved. But now it's like, you know, you had 15's combat system, which is completely different to 7 Remake's combat system, which is completely different to 14's combat system, which is probably going to be completely different to 16's combat system. And it's a bit confusing, I feel, as someone coming in.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, all of them having that different. It's almost. I feel like 7 is a culmination of everything that's came before it, and then kind of allowing them to do the turn-based style fighting as well too. It really. I don't know. I do like where hopefully they're still progressing in that, and maybe they'll find something that they can kind of staple down. Have you seen anything as far as the fighting system in 16 yet? Do you know?
I mean, there's lots of rumors flying around. It looks as though it's going to be... my hope and my dream is that they take the 7 Remake combat system and tweak it.
Yeah,
like modify it slightly, put a more unique stamp on it that's very 16, keep the core the same.
Yeah,
because when they did that in the past, like the ATB system between 4 and all the way up to 10.2, you can see the clear evolution, and it's enjoyable as it built out.
Yeah,
but like if they have all these different systems, it's like, okay, so we're gonna have the 7 Remake having its own stream. If 16 has a completely different combat system, I think it makes it quite hard for people to jump from one to the other and to understand what a Final Fantasy game is and why they should be interested in it. I mean, because the 7 Remake they built it's probably one of the best JRPG combat systems that there's ever been.
Yeah, they
managed to integrate the old school ATB system into real-time combat, and they did it seamlessly.
Yeah.
And like there are so many. I mean, one of the things that I like to do, which is some people would probably consider quite sad and boring, I like to look at all like the fine threads that have carried through, which is why like we do our evolution series, to just look at all the different elements where they pulled all these bits from. And like if you look at the 7 Remake combat system, it's pulled from so many different aspects of the franchise. It's like this massive complete love letter to everything.
Yeah.
And then if 16 they just say like, actually no, yeah, we don't want to use that, we want to do our own thing, like it makes no sense. Right? And like you'd even think from a cost saving perspective that they would think, okay, we've got a system here, it's basically universally liked by everyone, let's just use it again. Why not?
Yeah, why
not? No one's going to be kicking off. I mean, like, look at flipping From Software, right?
Yeah.
They recycle a very similar combat system with pretty much all of their games. They modify it slightly. Like Elden Ring, you can look at that and immediately identify like the way he rolls. That it's like the blocking system, the parry system. Like it's a Souls combat system that they've been using since Demon Souls. They used it in Bloodborne. Sekiro's got a variation of it, and no one cares.
Yeah. I think like they're able to just take a base, like they've got a good foundation there, and then they just keep building on it. And I feel like if Final Fantasy would continue to do that, like what was it called? The Final Fantasy Intergrade, but it was the new like synergizing. I can't remember exactly what
Intermission?
They called. Yeah, well, intermission, but it was the newer. They had like a new thing where you could kind of like.
Oh yeah, the synergizing attacks between Yuffie and Sonon.
Yeah, so good. If they literally just built off of the foundation that they already had. That was a really cool tweak. I don't think it changed it too much, and it improved it a little bit.
Yeah, and like you know, with 16, you know, 7 Remake had to use a lot of abilities because they were trying to use what was in 7.
Yeah.
16, they've got completely different ideas and stuff, and like you'd have a different director. But if you said to the director, okay, you've got to use this as a base, a framework, a foundation, kind of just roll with it, see what you can do with it.
Yeah.
See how you can make a version 2 of this. Because like, you know, you think about back in the day, you had Final Fantasy like 4, 5. They used the ATB system.
Yeah.
I can't remember the person's name, but whoever was the battle director on Chrono Trigger used that as a foundation to make the ATB 2.0. And then the ATB 2.0, this is a weird one, was ended up being the foundation for Final Fantasy XI's combat system.
Oh. Huh.
Like there's all these like kind of weird
Yeah.
threads, but like it just doesn't make sense to me that Square wouldn't want to try and build a foundation to be like, okay, Final Fantasy VII Remake has set the new standard for what a Final Fantasy game should be. 16 is going to use a similar framework. You can have a completely different story, cast of characters, music, presentation, whatever you want, but keep something the same between the two games, please.
Yes.
Like,
we need to write a letter.
Because otherwise it's got to the point where Final Fantasy 16, well, how do I even know it's a Final Fantasy game outside of it having that name? And that's what 15 was like as well, right? It had no real, outside of the fact there was like a chocobo.
Yeah, exactly. Like little themes that were the same.
It could have been Noctis's adventure. Like it.
Yeah.
You know?
I totally agree with that. And hopefully that I feel like with Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's a huge endeavor for them to take on. Like, it's a really ambitious goal that they're, like, breaking it up, and it's such a huge process. But also, like, so many people are critiquing it. There's so many eyes on this thing. So, like, if they come out with Remake Part 2 and the fighting style is different, the combat system, people are going to be like, what have you done? I don't know.
I mean, I'd like to think that at least between the two remake games, they'll keep it consistent. But then again, Lightning Trilogy... The final game, they were like, you know what, we don't want to party anymore. Single character. There's just there's some commonality there, but they did make some big changes.
Yeah. Well, all right. We've got a couple of really quick personal favorite questions from fans. So, one was, do you have a favorite boss fight in the entire series that you're like, this one crushed?
Ooh. I weirdly enough, I think that one of my favorites is Ifrit from 15.
Nice.
But it's mainly because of the music more than anything else. I love the fact that they made like this multi-layered track that when you get to different parts goes to this next level. And I love it when games have dynamic music.
Yes.
That changes based on what's happening, and that, for me, is probably one of the best battle themes. But outside of that, I definitely would say Caius in 13-2. I think he is what was missing from that from 13, because 13 didn't basically have a bad guy.
Yeah,
there wasn't like this kind of, the Bartandus is kind of there, and you know, like he wasn't someone that you could necessarily kind of hate.
Yeah,
in the same way that you kind of like vent your, like Sephiroth was there, you kind of vented your anger towards them, and like 8 had like combinations of like Adir, Adele, and Ultima Seer, who you kind of, there was a focal point. Like 9 had Kuja, 10 obviously had Seymour. Like there needed to be that kind of focal point. But Bartandus was just this kind of thing. Like, but then Caius came in 13-2, and I feel as though if he'd have been in 13, that game would have probably been a lot better received.
Yeah, I think
from a narrative perspective. And I love Caius's music as well. I think it's definitely up there with One Winged Angel as one of the best themes, like boss character themes.
It's awesome that you're like so into the music of Final Fantasy as well too. Like I am obsessed with the music of that. I write like tons of music that's inspired by Final Fantasy, and I think that's awesome that you're into that as well. But man, one for me, I thought about this after I saw this question asked, but like Hell House in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I don't know why, but that boss fight like changed it for me. I was like, it was awesome. I just loved how it, and then like there's multiple parts to it, it's flying around. It was freaking crazy.
Oh yeah, Hell House again, because I was fortunate enough to get the game early.
Nice.
And similar situation as Bartandus. I was fighting Hell House, and I was like, I just can't beat this guy. Like, what is going on here? And like, I hadn't got used to like looking at the info screen at all to look at weaknesses and stuff, because I'd made it all the way through the game to that point without having to. And I got there, and I think because again I was on a deadline to finish this game. You've got to finish this game in like 3 or 4 days. We had to produce a video for the review to hit the embargo.
That's right.
And I remember. Yeah, it must have taken me probably like an hour and a bit to beat Hell House. I was really tired because I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning
Oh my gosh.
and going to sleep around like 1,
Wow.
just so that I could play uninterrupted. Because like because I had to play like after everyone was asleep and before everyone woke up.
Yeah.
Because it's not really a child friendly game because our kids are like 5 and 2. And so yeah, I was just be trying to do this. I was really sleep deprived, and I was just like, oh, because I was getting so close without exploiting the elemental weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
and I could like get to like the last phase, and then I wipe, and I'm like, oh, this is just what's going on here. And then like I don't know, I just something twigged, and I was like, maybe if I just read the info, like the scan,
Yeah.
maybe that will help me.
Yeah,
And then it tells you exactly how you're supposed to beat it. And I was like, oh, really?
it was right there. That same thing happened to me. I seriously was stuck on it. I was crushing everything up to that point. I was like, is this game really on hard right now? What's happening here? And no, he was like,
but yeah, I loved I honestly, it's the small things I love about the 7 remake.
mm-hmm.
And I think especially as I've been doing video content around it, and like just the attention to detail in that game is insane. Like I can't think of another game that has that level of attention to detail. But I just love like Scotch and Koch doing the crowd announcements based on what's happening in the actual match. They'd be so like, good. If you bring out a certain summon, they'll like do an announcement, or like if you get beaten up, they'll like say something. Like I love how interactive that whole stuff is around it.
Night Sky Prince said, what separates 7R from 16 to me is that Square hired an external staff that knows how to make action games. They had some former Capcom staff for 7 Remake and Devil May Cry for Final Fantasy 16, which I mean,
I think they've started to realize that they have deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
And like even the fact that with Integrate, the Kitase spoke about how they've hired a lighting team. Like they never before had like thought about, they just did the lights themselves. They figured out, we can make, but now they've hired like a proper Hollywood lighting team so that they can light scenes properly. I think that's like a real step forward. And yeah, like with the battle systems, like they want to push towards more action games despite chunks of their fan base not wanting them to hire specialists, because things have changed a lot with the way things are. Like they relied on Hiroyuki Ito for so many years, and he's obviously disappeared now apart from making dungeon encounters, and they didn't really have anyone who kind of stepped up in the same way. Like there's lots of turnover as well. Like the guy who worked on the battle systems for 10 and 13 left the company after 13 under like a black cloud, and they didn't really have anyone else after that to kind of take the mantle. Like I don't know why they didn't get Ito involved with like 15, for example, or anything. But yeah, I think the positive hires from external sources, especially just cherry picking everyone from Capcom, seems to have worked quite well. I am slightly concerned about Suzuki and him not working with Endo. Because I feel as though it would make sense for the 7 remake battle director, and the 16 combat director to talk to each other and work very closely. And whether they are or not remains to be seen.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, and man, I know that you've got a kind of tight schedule here today as well. So, what do you have going on new? Like, what's some stuff that we can expect to be coming out of Final Fantasy Union in the next little bit?
Well, so the Kickstarter campaign has about just over a week left to go. So if you're interested in learning about Final Fantasy, learning about the craziness of these random games that exist, and I can give you an example here. Some of the games that we're covering are like there was a Final Fantasy 12 spin-off game that was released on MySpace.
Nice.
The Chocobo's Dungeon, like Final Fantasy Fables games in Japan. So that game has a mini card game called Pop Up in it. In Japan, they released a browser-based game called Pop Up Online, so you could play Pop Up cards with people.
Nice.
yeah, there's so many of these random games that are going to be featured in the book, as well as the voices of creators like Nice Guy Prince. So yeah, that ends very soon. We've got loads of different tiers available. If you search on Kickstarter for The Legacy of the Crystal, you can find out more information about it. Outside of that, so we will continue producing regular content. So the Origins videos are actually on hiatus at the moment. I had a bit of, I did like 30 of them.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of burnout on the Origins videos. But we do, like lots of like really detailed facts videos. And the one feedback we always get is that we use a bit of a clickbait title, like facts you didn't know. But most people come in and go, I actually didn't know most of those. It's refreshing.
Yeah, that's awesome though.
And yeah, like we do history of videos where we kind of look at the development story of games. One of the big things we started this year as well, which we're gonna hope to continue next year, is we're working on a huge like documentary called The Complete History of Square. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that.
Yeah, I did, and that was actually that was one of y'all wrote that before, correct? Like that's been a book.
Yeah. So we've done, I think, just shy of 2 hours of that video so far. So that's part 1 and part 2, and we've just got up to the release of the first Final Fantasy game.
Oh my god, nice. Does it speed roll after that? Like it seems like.
So I don't know how many parts there's going to be. Part 3 is going to be looking at probably my provisional outlook is what happened after Final Fantasy 1 through to the release of Final Fantasy 4. So it's going to cover like a 2 to 3 year period. But then after that, I've still got Final Fantasy 5 through to 10-2 to get through.
So we're not
and
putting
everything else that
boundaries
happens.
on it. We're not putting boundaries. There could be a lot of parts.
Because it's not a Final Fantasy focused video series. So there's going to be tons of other stuff as well. We're going to be looking at like the Saga franchise, the Mana franchise, things like Super Mario RPG,
the greatest Super Mario games.
Movies as well, like Bushido Blade, guys, like there's so many different things that Square did throughout that period. And it's been like, I think everyone's been really surprised, I think is probably the word I'd use, at how detailed we have been. The fact that we started off the video series by I think we started off when was it? I'm having to remember now. It was definitely before World War II.
Jeez, oh my god, that is awesome though.
So it starts all the way back there, like how World War II led to the creation of Square.
I have to go back and see this. We got to see this. Wait, so when is the next one going to be available? Are they going to be on YouTube as well, or? Yes.
So yeah, part 1 and 2 are on the channel already. Part 3, I was aiming to get live in January, but I don't know if that's going to be realistic because it depends how much I can get written on it. Because it takes a long time to research an hour-long video and write an hour-long video. So yeah, that's going to be a big thing next year. So hopefully next year we'll be finishing off that project. Hopefully 6 parts, maybe 7, could be 8.
Not putting boundaries on it, people. I like it.
But originally it was going to be 1 video.
Oh my gosh.
That was going to cover like the all the way up until the merger with Enix, and it was going to have like three 20-minute segments, and then I started writing the first segment and I was like, hold on a minute. I've got like the first segment was I split that one segment into 10 segments, and I got through like the first 2 parts of that, and I'd already written like 4,000 words or something. I was like, oh my God. This is not clearly going in 1 video. And yeah, other than that, like, obviously, like, Kickstarter, the Complete History of Square will be finished next year, hopefully. We have been having lots of requests to do timeline videos. So like looking at games in the same way that we look at characters. And the one that people really want us to do is Ivalice.
Oh, nice.
Which is a very big undertaking because the Ivalice story it spans like 6 games. Um, and like, if I'm gonna do, I want to do it properly. So
Yeah.
looking at all of the games, how small things are referenced in other games, how it all feeds together. So yeah, that's gonna be a fun project to look into at some point.
Yeah, it's insane, man.
And then at some point as well, and this is gonna get me some sass from the chat.
Dun dun dun.
At some point, I probably will need to start playing 14.
Yeah, you got one person in here that might be like, "What? Oh my god!"
I just don't know. I just don't know when it's gonna happen.
So you haven't played it at all yet? Like it's not even gonna.
So I played 14 1.0. I played it for review as well, and I was actually one of the people that was quite positive about the game at its original launch. Because I was a big 11 player, and so I went into 14 with it, basically expecting what it was, because it was 11 again, but slightly worse in some areas, slightly better in others. And when I was playing 14, my computer set on fire. I was talking to Lauren on Skype, and like I was like, "There's like there's smoke coming up from behind my monitor. Like, what's that?" And then like my computer caught on fire.
Oh my god!
So I didn't play 14 for a while. I then played A Realm Reborn when it came out in 2013. I played that for a little bit, and then Lauren and I went back to playing it in 2015, but we stopped when our first daughter was born. And just couldn't get back into it. There's just no chance to. I don't even know when I'd fit it into my day.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking. It is a huge game, but like Blitz said, he said whenever you finally do, you will enjoy it, and that's all that matters. And I totally agree. Like I'm like you. I kind of played it really early on, and I was not. It just seemed like a massive undertaking to get into, and I was like, this is too big for me. And but no, it's like. Now getting into it and playing it more and seeing a lot of other people and like how-tos and how to kind of get over some of the first initial hurdles, I feel like it's definitely developed.
I mean, it's crazy how popular it's gone. I mean, you even look back even like 2 or 3 years, and in comparison now, like it's funny how like the consensus changes as well. Like you know, obviously we've been doing content for a while. Like YouTube's now like over 5 years old, and back when we were like somewhat successful, people didn't really care about the fact we didn't cover 14 that much. They were kind of accepting of that. But as we've got bigger and bigger, and 14 has become a much bigger thing, there's now people saying that we should be embarrassed about the fact that we don't cover the game in a lot of detail, like that we don't give it enough credit. Like when we're doing all our content, we don't give it enough spotlight, and it's just like what do you want from me? I can only play what I can play. It doesn't make me any less of a fan of the franchise just because I don't have the time to play 14. But the counter is always like, if you're a real fan, you'd make the time.
There you go. Well, do you have? Well, I mean, we can do an announcement here if you're all right with doing this. But if you do get into 14, do you have a server in mind that you would get into?
So Lauren has actually just started playing 14.
Wow.
She's desperately trying to do it, and once she gets a certain way, and I feel as though I'm going to be encouraged to join her. So I think she's on Shiva.
Oh, there you go.
I'm on Shiva.
She's on Shiva.
She's on Shiva.
Nice. She's on Shiva.
There you go. Well, that's the announcement then. Everybody clip that. We're putting it everywhere. He's on Shiva.
I will be on Shiva one day.
Yeah, there's nice. So I'm just saying, yes, I feel like, well, with your wife getting involved too, I think that's awesome. First of all, I just wanted to say that, like, as a content creator and having a supportive wife and stuff, I could only imagine her being involved in like, more involved with like the gaming aspect of it. She loves getting on my channel and like messing with me and stuff. So like we do challenges and like she'll do a waxing strip on my arm or something, and she loves doing that. But like just being able to have like those conversations, it's like that's very cool that you guys are able to connect in that way. And I don't know, I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean it was we've it's been a bit more difficult, especially like since the pandemic and everything, and we had to kind of find different ways of working, trying to keep the channel going, because I still work full time as well. And Lauren, like we were having to homeschool while write videos, edit videos, and we had a really good dynamic because I do the research and the writing and the recording, and then Lauren would do the editing, and all the production side of it. But it just kind of got a bit unmanageable. But it was really nice because like whenever I was writing stuff, I'd always talk to her about the stuff I'd found, and we'd have discussions about it. Especially like, one of the videos that we're most proud of was we did like this really weird study looking at the odd similarities that exist between Yuna and Seymour, and how they're basically the same character.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was something that Lauren had on her mind for a long time, but we had to find the right way to do the video so that it didn't like get misinterpreted or anything, because there is an element of race involved with their stories, and we wanted to make sure that however we did it, it was going to be a positive contribution to the franchise, and not seen as a negative one. And like we had so many discussions about that, and we just love just a lot of the ideas that we come up with are just from these discussions that we have about stuff.
That's so cool.
And the fact that we still do the podcast. Well, we've actually just missed the last two because things have been too crazy, but we would normally do a podcast where we just talk about stuff and generally get into heated discussions about things. There has been a soapbox that has known to come out every now and again. And, I actually have to put my hand up a little bit because I was quite critical about the first Soldier and what they were trying to do, but it seems as though everyone really loves it.
It's got under my skin, man.
I saw you've been playing it as well.
Yeah, it's good.
We've got a couple of ambassadors in chat too.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's definitely different, but like it's super addictive. Exactly, Blitz. It's fair.
I've tried playing the game. I'm on an iPhone SE, and it runs like trash.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, if I didn't upgrade my iPhone just for the game, but once I got the phone, like I got the 13 Pro Max or whatever, and so as soon as I got it, I was like, yes. And now I'm like, Blitz showed me how to get my controller hooked to it. I'm like playing it essentially on my Mac, but I don't know.
Yeah, I came second in one match.
Oh yes,
I thought it was pretty good.
Look, let's.
But like I have to play like it looks really bad and it lags a ton, and it's not the nicest of experiences. But I was genuinely worried like for a long time because Square Enix didn't have the best track record when it came to producing these kind of things, and when it came out as well, it got the reviews were terrible.
Yeah,
like I was watching it very keenly, and nice. Like in Japan, I think on the Google Play Store, it had a review of score of like 2 out of 5, which is not good. But it has massively recovered now. I think it's like 4+.
Well, I mean, honestly, like if they're legitimately reviewing it, I feel like if they keep up to date with how it's like all the maintenance that it's gone through and stuff, which downtime has sucked, but they've been really good as far as like reimbursing people for the downtime that's been happening. But the updates that they've been doing have really been making changes in the game. I think it's pretty awesome. And Blitz said that he has been chipping away at the marketing guide to bring it to PC.
Yeah,
so
I don't understand crossed. Like. But based on how good it looks, right? And everyone is basically just trying to play it on a monitor.
Yeah.
And with a controller. Why didn't they just release it on like the PS4 and PS5, Xbox One?
Yes. Why? What? I don't know. We really need to sit down with them, okay? Me and you we'll talk to them, all right? We'll talk to the marketing people. Blitz, we got this.
You know why it's doing so well, though? It's because it's not Square Enix that made it. It's 18. So it's someone else. They just took full responsibility.
Nice. Yeah, I saw somewhere that like they felt like if they... I can't remember where I saw this at, but it said that if they slapped like Final Fantasy VII on it, that would have like helped market it better. But honestly, they have done a good job. Like, dude, the maps, if like Remake is pretty much the same map. Like it's really well done. But yeah, skins and stuff, it's pretty awesome. I'm sorry, anybody in chat that's like a super huge fan, but I mean, like, I love the game for sure. But that's what I'd heard before the game came out. Everybody's like, yeah, they're gonna put like
Oh yeah, there was
7 on
a
there.
ton of negativity around it.
Yeah.
But that's just, I mean, it's fair based on their previous track record. And
Mhm.
now we will be a little bit more optimistic when they announce
Yeah.
these weird crossover genre tie-in things that they're doing.
Yeah, for real. Well, man, seriously, I thank you so much for hopping on here. I know we're actually gone over the time that you said that you were allotting here. So thank you, and again, and I'm sorry for going over. Hopefully, we didn't keep you from anything.
Oh no, it's fine. We've actually got a little bit more time if you wanted to.
Oh, there you go. Well, yeah, Night Sky Prince just said that CBU3 is only team I feel like I can trust from them to consistently do quality stuff. Most of their internal stuff is hard and miss, or is hit and miss. But yeah.
It's fair. It's fair.
It's a fair one. Yeah. Do you feel like they're going to be able to, with the success of this and kind of in the shooter style realm, do you think that we'll see more stuff coming from Square in this same genre?
Probably not. I feel as though this was kind of like a one-off. It feels like, in a way, like a new Empire, although I don't probably feel like I should mention that game in the same breath as First Soldier. Like Square just like to try stuff out. I feel as though like they probably wouldn't. I mean, what would they add? Another Final Fantasy Battle Royale game? I mean, they may make another one from another franchise. They do, but I can't. Yeah, I can't see them. I feel as though the only thing they could do is make a standalone game and use this as a basis for it.
Yeah,
but it may encourage them to do. I mean, like, who knows how crazy the 7 remake compilation is going to get?
Right.
Like, we've got this game. There's going to be Ever Crisis coming out, and that's just the beginning. Like, there is going to be so many more spin-off games being produced over the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy.
Have you heard more about Ever Crisis? Like, I know that it's going to be kind of like a chapters type thing where they're going to be releasing the entire saga, but do you know how that's going to actually look? Is it just going to be like chapter 1, it's going to cost $49.99 and then the rest of it, or?
No, actually, I don't think they've really released too much about. I feel as though it's going to be a free-to-play game.
That's what I was hoping for. That's what I thought. But
and there's going to be like skins and stuff. Kind of like most of their normal mobile games would be, like Opera Omnia and stuff, where there's a consistent storyline that goes along, and there'll be like events and stuff where you can buy weapons and all this stuff. I hope it is very much like Opera Omnia though, where it's not like a really heavy emphasis on the monetization. Because it's one of the reasons why I played Opera Omnia quite a lot, to the point where I actually had to stop because I was playing it too much.
Nice.
But I never really got into like Brave Exvius or Mobius just because they pushed the monetization too much.
Yeah,
it was a massive turnoff.
I agree.
But yeah, Ever Crisis, I'm curiously optimistic about it, but I have at the back of my mind is worried at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I feel as though, because they said that they're not going to be making any retcon changes to the storyline, but they already said that they're going to be doing like a chapter to explore Sephiroth's childhood, which obviously was not in any previous thing. So they will very clearly be like making up new story and stuff. And my worry is that they're going to be using it. I mean, it's going to be a promotional tool for the 7 remake.
Yeah.
More than it is going to be a retelling of the original story. And so, like, yeah, I guess my worry is that they're going to be retconning stuff to make the remake continuity make more sense. As opposed to it being like this. Because I think what everyone was hoping is it was going to be a very traditional retelling of the original story, just with updated graphics and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Basically, like Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition is to Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be that at all.
Yeah, I agree. Especially knowing, I mean, honestly, I am really excited to find out it, like the Sephiroth's backstory, like his childhood. I'm excited to see what that looks like, because I think that's something that I talked to MJ Gallagher about, like just wondering how far into the Nibelheim incident are we actually going to end up getting into, and like, are we going to see other backstories in part 2? But if they're going to be doing that on the mobile game, then who knows, man? It might be something that we see in remake. And like Night Sky said, you know, they also said remake wasn't changing, and then pretty much pulled the rug from us. So
Yeah. What do you mean? It didn't change. It's like a 1-to-1. Like,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly. Like you guys just don't remember it right.
Yeah. Actually, having said that, there is a notion of the Whispers existing in the first game, or like
I heard that, yeah,
and like the weird flashbacks that Cloud is having, where Sephiroth appears in the first part, were happening in the original. You just didn't see Sephiroth there, like.
So yeah, there was So after playing remake, I've played Final Fantasy the original twice now on stream, and we've looked for stuff like that. And yeah, there are a lot of parts in there where like you go back and it looks like they just gave us a little bit more detail, but it's wild. It is wild, man. Do you have a prediction on where part 2 will take us? Like where we'll end at on part 2?
I feel as though like one of the natural places is at the end of disc 2, like, or no, sorry, end of disc 1. What I'm talking about, like kind of like the Sephiroth with Aerith incident. But I honestly don't know. Like, I feel as though based on the amount of content they have in the first part, then like ending in Junon could be a possibility, because obviously like Junon is going to be it has to be a huge city.
Yeah.
And like, you know, if Midgar was that large, Junon probably needs to be of a similar-ish size.
Yeah.
And it seems as though based on what they showed, Calm is going to be pretty huge too.
Yeah.
So
Calm looks awesome.
Junon seems like it could be a logical place for them to finish. But if they finish there, then there's still so much more story to tell. I don't know how many parts we'd end up with.
I know. Yeah.
And then like, you know, after that, you've got what are the other natural cutoff points? There aren't really too many after Junon.
One that I saw that I think is really compelling, but it's a really massive undertaking because there's so many big parts included in this. But they said start at the Nibelheim flashback, started in the flashback, and then ended them walking into Nibelheim. And I was like, that makes sense. And then, you know, but there's so much in between here and there. There's a lot of stuff.
Because you've got to do Calm, Fort Condor, Junon, Coral,
Cosmo Canyon,
Gold Saucer, Cosmo Canyon.
That's
like,
I don't know how they could do all that, and I don't know.
And have everything be like, I mean, they could do it all, but can they do it all, but have everything feel like at the scale and as good as we want it to be?
Yeah, pay the respect.
They've already done with the first part. They've already shown that they're going to be doing tons of side stories and stuff. So like, I mean, Gongaga is clearly going to be given a bigger focus in whatever we do in the future. Like, how could they not? Like, it's Zack's hometown.
Sorry,
they've got to make a big deal about meeting Zack's parents in there and all the awkwardness of that. And like the stuff in Coral has got to, I mean, with Dyne, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How crazy are they going to make Chocobo racing?
Dude, like, so much they could dive into. Like, I can't remember who was it that told me that like thought that could be the natural starting and ending point, but like the amount of stuff that would be involved in that would be insane. Like,
but even cutting there as well, that's still not very far through the story.
I know. Yeah. It's hard to think that they're going to do this in 3 parts, which I don't know. Is that just something that's like...
You think disc 1 of the original game ended at the Temple of the Ancients, right? After Jenova birth. And like, Nibelheim is nowhere near that.
Yeah, no. There's so much even after that. So I don't know. I don't see, like you said, I think Junon would be a good one, or they could even end it in like Casa de Sol or something. They could end it there, you know, maybe.
Yeah, kind of like just we're on the other side of the shore. We've done the boat, because the boat ride could be where they do like a massive big boss fight, because obviously you fight Jenova there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Night Sky Prince said, I think the weirdest thing for me personally remaking Final Fantasy VII was, sorry so much for the task. We had to divide into multiple games, but then we got the entire story added on top of it. It makes me think, why focus on remaking 7?
It's so crazy, because like even just the distribution of those parts, based on how big Midgar the first part was, It's
Yeah.
so hard to figure out how they're going to split it. And yeah, like how are they going to integrate all this crazy new story? I mean, like Toriyama's hinting that there's parallel
I
universes. Like you've
know, man.
got old characters that coming back. Like how are they going to make it all make sense while still telling the same story as the first game?
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane, man. I'm excited, but like you said, I guess like just very optimistic.
Curiously optimistic.
Yes,
Yeah.
very much so. And I like that. I think that's awesome. But yeah, man. So do you have an actual date for when the book is going to be coming out? Do you have an
We are hoping to have it sent out to people sort of April, May next year. I think that's the majority of it is written at the moment. It needs to go through obviously like rounds of editing because I've just like I bashed through a first draft. I think it's about 60,000 words.
Oh my gosh.
And I've already been like going through like some of the games already and just thinking like, oh, this isn't sounding very good. Like I need to rework all this to make it sound a bit better. So yeah, it's going to be an editing process, and I obviously need to get all the excerpts as well from the various creators, like the Night Sky Prince.
There you go.
And integrate those in as well. And I haven't announced it yet, so I'm going to announce it now, and then I'll probably be announcing it a bit later. We're also going to be adding Bravely to the book too. That's another, like, we get so many comments in our videos about like why we don't include Bravely in our Evolution series and stuff, and so I thought, you know what, why not ask the question? So we put up a poll. Do you want us to include Bravely in the book? 70% of people said yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you go.
So that's another 6 games.
Oh my god. Jeez. This like, how many pages is this book going to be? Do you know? Do you have an idea? Rough?
It's going to be about 250.
Yeah. It looks beautiful, by the way. Like the hardcover of that, you have to get the hardcover. Splurge. If you're going to get the book, get the hardcover. It looks so good, and it will be like a great collection piece, man. It very well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like, we're so happy to have Colin Tan, who's designed it. He actually is like a Final Fantasy Unit alumni as well.
That's awesome.
He's a crazy talented artist who's like working on like really big animations now. And yeah, we were so happy that he was able to contribute. So he did the hardcover dark and light version. We just revealed the paperback cover as well, which is slightly different. And he's working on some art prints as well. So each of the book's going to be segmented into eras. So it's going to be the Square era, which we're subtitling the Sakaguchi era.
Oh, nice.
Then there will be the Wada era, and then there's going to be the Matsuda era. And the idea is that he's creating like these kind of murals or like a Star Wars kind of poster where there's going to be like the kind of key creative figure, and then they're going to be surrounded by the core characters that came from that era.
Cool, dude. That's going to be awesome.
I think that we're going to be able to share the kind of work in progress for the Square era in the coming days, but it looks really, really cool so far.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see that. That sounds awesome. And you said he's done a lot of other like Final Fantasy related stuff.
Oh yeah, Colin's done. I mean, his Twitter handle is unartifacts. And yeah, he's like does tons and tons of fan art for Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah,
he's a big 14 player. Also does stuff around Star Wars. Huge Metal Gear Solid fan too, and
nice.
The Witcher as well. So if you like those things, he's incredibly talented.
Heck yeah, man. Nice. Well, brother, again, thank you so much for coming on here. I actually found out I gotta go grab my daughters as well from daycare. So, but man, seriously, I cannot wait to get this book. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna go grab those hard copies, and I'm gonna post a link to all of them in the description. This will be up on YouTube probably in like the starting of next week. So I'll post links in the description, and yeah, man, I just wanted to say personally, and I know from a lot of people that are in chat too, like, thank you for doing what you've done, because you really you've been doing it and freaking setting the stage for a lot of people coming up, and so that's awesome, man.
You're welcome. I mean, I'm glad that the content that we create is people enjoy, people keep watching it, people like what we do. It's still kind of, I still don't quite get it personally. Like I know I'm still just that kind of imposter of just like, the content that we do isn't I'm never satisfied. I'm always thinking that I can do a better job.
That's awesome, though. I mean, like,
I'm so glad that people enjoy what we do and how we do it, because I know that it's quite unorthodox what we do, and like who does. I mean, there's like the evolution concept is all over YouTube, but who actually talks about it?
Yeah,
who does that, right? Who talks for 50 minutes about how the white mage has changed over the last 30 years?
It's the content we needed that we didn't even know we did, and it's genuine, man. That's what I think a lot of people connect with. It's the fact that like it's very genuine. So yeah, Blitz, say keep killing it, Daryl. So exactly, definitely keep killing it, dude. So we've got the book coming out soon. And then also you said there were a couple of new videos that you're working on as well too. The history of, which honestly, I've got to go back and watch The Square. I haven't watched, I think I've seen the second one. So I kind of started out of order, but I need to watch the first one. And yeah, man, again, thank you so much for coming on here, brother.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. We're gonna find somebody to rate out to, and yeah, like I said, I'm gonna link all of your descriptions in the bio, and hopefully we can get up to 100,000 on this Kickstarter. We're like on the brink, guys.
Crazy.
100,000. Let's send him over the edge. That's my goal for me personally, getting you there. Let's do it, man.
Now I've just got to ship them all out at some point.
There you go. That's gonna be the hard part for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, Lauren and I were thinking with it coming through. Like, I think we've almost 1,000 books have been ordered. That weighs like over half a ton.
Yeah.
We've got to store those somewhere and then ship them out to everyone.
International shipping will eat you, man. It's a rough one. It's a rough one, dude. Whew, whew. But all right, brother. Well, good luck with everything, and seriously, thank you again so much. Have a blessed rest of your day, man.
Nice chatting with you.
Thank you. You too. Peace. Kapow! Guys, thank you all so freaking much for coming by and hanging out. Daryl is such a cool person, legit. I have been watching his videos now for a good 5-6 years, and I don't know. He is literally an awesome inspiration in the community, and I can't thank him enough for getting on here. I think that's freaking awesome. But before my wife stabs me directly in my face, and that is the only thing I've got going for me is my face, we're gonna right on out of here. Sorry I dominated chat. Dude, Night Sky, thank you so much for coming in here, and Blitz for being a part of the conversation. That was freaking awesome. I got a little fangirly, not gonna lie. But either way, guys, seriously, thank you both for coming on here and talking with us. And let's see here. We're gonna rate out to a freaking gotta add an L in here. Pow! LOL. It's all up, man. Thanks for hosting this. Dude, for real. And both of you guys, I will be talking to y'all soon if you guys are down for getting on the podcast with me. Yeah, I'm trying to get a lot more Final Fantasy content creators in here and bringing more spotlight to it, because I honestly feel like the more the better. And we're heading out to Legions Gaming. I know he's playing a little Final Fantasy First Soldier, and I gotta, dude, I swear, he is insanely good. Like, it's scary how freaking good he is at this. But yeah, guys, y'all be good. Thank y'all so much for stopping by. Let's go hit up Legions and tell them we said what's up. Legions and me are getting on a 10-game win streak today. Holy shit. Blitz, save some slapping cheeks for the rest of us, man. But either way, guys, be good, and we'll catch y'all later. Toodles.